Barry Shainbaum is a successful and talented photographer. He has made a career out of documenting the joy and the integrity of the human spirit. But the images captured by his camera don't reveal the depth of darkness and depression he's experienced. Shainbaum suffered from severe mental illness. It started in his teens and reached a peak in his 30s. But Shainbaum fought back to realize the dream of a lifetime.
Hope and Heroes, Portraits of Integrity and Inspiration is a book by photographer and author Barry Shainbaum. Barry, now also a motivational speaker, was diagnosed as bipolar when he was 18 and spent years on medication. Now cured, as he says, he recounts his story in the hope of helping others.
It is in facing those feelings of pain and rage and isolation, humiliation, is in times where we find our soul, we find our connection to life. Life does in time seem to come together. The presentation this morning is called Hope and Heroism. Many of you are here because you've been fired, you've been downsized, you're going through isolation, maybe shame, maybe humiliation, maybe rage.
Maybe joy.
Life gave me a whole new change. Everything that I knew was normal was out the window. I'm now living with people with schizophrenia, bipolar, Tourette syndrome. I lived in this place for 16 months. I learned the phrase, "There go I, except for the grace of God," and that anyone can fall and have a serious time. I also learned there the power of love and hope and support. When Jane was a very young girl, she showed her love of nature and the outdoors, like many children, and I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but a lot of us when we were young, I'm sure we played in the front of the backyard, and dug to find the other end of the earth, and along the way found earthworms. And the deeper you go, you find more earthworms. So Jane was playing in the backyard when she was very young and made friends with the earthworms. And what do you do with friends? You don't leave them behind. So when her mother went in to tuck her in at night, there was Jane in bed, and right beside her on the pillow was a pile of earthworms and soil. Can you imagine, those of you that are parents here, coming in to tuck in your sweetie pie, and there's the earthworms? How might you react? You have a choice. You could go with your gut instinct and go, "Do you know how hard I work to take care and I slave, and this is the thanks I get?" Or you could say, "Honey, do you think they miss their friends?" Rick Hansen, living in northern British Columbia years ago, when he and his buddy were hitchhiking, and a truck driver came by with a pickup truck, and they jumped in the back. They were kids. He was 15 years old. They didn't know the driver was drunk. And within minutes of speeding down the highway, he flipped over the truck. The doctor came by and said, "Rick, you will never walk again." At any age, if we're told you won't see again or hear again or walk again or anything else, a tremendous tragedy. And Rick went through the whole process, as you can imagine, of anger, fear, grief, and in time, acceptance. We have to accept where we are and then move forward not as a victim, but from a new foundation. Silken Laumann is another Canadian heroine. While she was practicing for the Winter Olympics a number of years ago, the boat from Germany, by mistake, smashed into her boat with such a ferocity that it sliced off her calf muscle. It hung off her leg, and she went into shock. The doctor said to her, "Silken, you will not compete in the next 6 weeks in the Winter Olympics." And she said to herself, and she said to the doctor, "I will compete. I will do it." She made a commitment to herself that she would. Now, of course, when you make a commitment, there's no guarantee that you will. But if you don't make a commitment, there's a guarantee that you probably won't. She did compete 6 weeks later, and she did win the silver. The power of believing in yourself, of finding the hero or heroine within. We all have that within us. And again, it's many times it's only when our back is against the wall. I sat up on the set of The West Wing with the backdrop that I brought. And my thinking was, have the handcuffs hanging from the wrist. And the thinking is, I'll be arrested, I'll make my mark, but you can't stop me. So symbolically working with that. And then I listen to my subject. So here, as you listen to your partners or your spouses or your children, sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Or you listen to your coworkers or your boss. Sometimes what they have to contribute will give you a new perspective. So Martin Sheen said to me, well, okay, that's okay, but he says, how about this? I went, And I thought, the power of the triangle, the strength. He's the one that gave me the idea. We've all heard the phrase, I'd give someone the shirt off my back. Craig Kilberger is a young man from Thornhill. He was in India. And one of the street kids who he was talking to was so enamored with meeting Craig and Craig's commitment to helping them that he literally did take the shirt off his back and he gave it to Craig. And Craig values this shirt. And Craig gave him one of his shirts. And Craig was asked a number of years ago, Craig's now in his early 20s, and he says, who do you really admire in the world? Craig has met world leaders, and you can also see Mother Teresa at the top of the back of the picture. And you would think Craig would have said someone like, maybe Nelson Mandela, and he says, no, and he said, the street kids. And I said, why do you so look up to the street children? And he says, they have a sense of community, and they support each other. Bring it back again to Happen. You're here to support each other. Just like your families and friends in here, you have friends in Happen. And he says, when a street child is given an orange, cuts it in 4, and shares it. When one of them is hurt or injured, they'll carry their friends around. Dr. Phil McGraw. Many people love this man or hate this man, but you gotta admit that Dr. Phil has made himself a phenomenon. From co-founding Courtroom Sciences, which is a large firm in Texas that does mock trials, that companies and corporations hire him for a lot of money to see how a trial may work out. And then when Oprah was sued by the Texas Cattlemen's Association years ago, and she happened to cross paths with Phil, and he saw that she was being demoralized and kicked down, and he said to himself that if Oprah Winfrey is getting kicked down, that is like a big part of the states being demoralized. And he said to her in these words, he says, girl, he says, you're going to get your ass kicked if you don't get your act together. And she hired him. And he helped her find her strength and her meaning. And she did win the lawsuit. Nelson Mandela was incarcerated for 27 years in a little cell. Can you imagine being locked in here for 27 years? And when he was released, he had a choice. He could come up with anger and say, now that I'm free and we the blacks are in the majority, we're going to show them. Or he had a choice to say, we can forgive. We don't forget what happened. And as you know, he had made the choice to forgive and to move forward. As you build your careers and go for the next job interview, you have a choice. You can move forward with hope and peace and inspiration and taking that challenge and courage and throwing your heart over the fence. And I know you can do it. So as you move forward, think of all the ideals that Nelson Mandela stood for, and I wish you well in your future endeavors. Thank you.